Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new video. I'm delighted to be joined by Rory Hamilton, and thank you ever so much for coming on my channel.
No problem, Darren. It's really good to be on. We've eventually managed to get a date together, and
Yeah, it's
yeah,
been
but I'm looking forward to it.
perfect. So, what made you fall in love with football and commentating? What was it?
I mean, it's a good question. That I don't think anything made me fall in love with football. I've just always been in love with it ever since I started playing. You play before you watch the professional game. So I think it wasn't until I went to school that I started watching more of the professional game, because my dad wasn't a football fan at all. So it took being in a class of mates that really liked football, so that got me watching it. But I always played it, and I played all sports. It didn't really matter. I mean, football was obviously one of the main ones. I played a lot of rugby, a lot of golf, cricket, athletics, anything that was on and that was being offered at school or out with school. Then I was generally quite heavily involved in it. And commentary is a funny one. I mean, it didn't really strike me early on when I was working in TV that it was actually a sort of attainable position. And I don't know, like growing up and people asking you what would you want to be, it was never something that I would have said, just because I didn't really even think of it as a job. And so it's more that once you get into the industry and you're a part of it, and you realize that maybe there's a pathway to being able to get to commentate on games.
What made you join BT Sports and Premier Sport? Now, I believe you were working for Sky Sports as well.
Yeah, so I mean, my sort of history in broadcasting goes back way before that. But to briefly cover that, I first of all had a junior production role at STV, doing doing Scott Sport. And then I moved down to Setanta Sports, who were in the same building. And again, it was a production role before I was freelance after that. So I can't remember, maybe it's about 8 years or something, I was freelance and mainly working with Sky. Did a lot of stuff for Sky Sports News, while also doing a lot of other freelance things where I got chances to do commentary. But actually one of the companies I worked with towards the latter end of that was Premier Sports, and I've always kept that relationship going with them, which has been a really handy one for me in my career. I've got a really good link with the guys that are in charge there, so they've been great to me over the years. And when the opportunity came up to go to BT Sport, it was a really easy decision, to be honest. I mean, I'd been freelance for 8 years, as I say, and it was tough getting many live games with Sky. Obviously, Ian Crocker is their number one guy, and he's a brilliant commentator, and he's been a really, really good help to me throughout my career, and continues to be. I message Ian quite a lot. But I would maybe only get 5-6 games a season, which is quite difficult to come in and out and just drop it and then pick it up again 6 months later and you're just into a live game. So going to BT Sport gave me the opportunity to be a full-time commentator. So I had a deal for 3 years to do 50 games a season. So that was the first time that I really felt that I was a full-time commentator. And so, like I say, it was an easy decision. We actually, myself and my partner, we were planning to go to Canada, just to relocate there, and we hadn't booked any flights, but we were looking at where we wanted to go and where we wanted to live and just kind of start a new life. And then I got the call from Grant Phillips offering me the job with BT Sport. So The Canadian mountains and the snow there was put on hold.
Who were your footballing idols?
So growing up, I think I continue to be a big Scotland fan, and I think when you're young, there wasn't as much football on TV, so the big events were really the times that stuck out for me. It's so different now because there's so much football on, but then it was a little bit more of an excitement that there was a game on. So I think major tournaments, really stick out for me. So I think guys like Gary McAllister, John Collins, Ali McCoist, Andy Gorham, even though I was a terrible goalie, so I would never look at him in that way. But I think guys like that, Colin Hendry, Scotland had a lot of good players in the 90s, and we qualified for 1990 World Cup, 92 Euros, missed the 94 World Cup, but not by much, 96 Euros, 98 World Cup. I mean, when you list that off, for a kid growing up, and then to go the length of time, 22 years, 23 years it will be until the summer, without qualifying for a World Cup, it's so strange. I think at the time, and this will seem odd to you, but they just started showing Italian football, and that was the only foreign football that you could watch in the UK at the time. So Sunday afternoon you could watch one Italian game. It was because because Paul Gascoigne had gone to Lazio and Inter Milan had signed Paul Ince, and David Platt I think was still out at Sampdoria. So they obviously saw a market there to show Italian games in the UK, and Italian football at that time had all the top players. So there was a lot of those players that I ended up growing up wanting to be like and support, and guys like Gabriel Batistuta for me, he was my favorite player growing up. Just absolutely loved him. But there was loads. There were so many good ones at that time in Italy. I mean, Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo was there for such a long time. Maldini, Baresi, that AC Milan team when they had all the Dutch players like Ruud Gullit and Frank Rijkaard and Marco van Basten. That's going back a little bit further. And then like I love the Parma team of the sort of late 90s with Thuram and Crespo. There's so many good players in that team. So I think they're probably to list about 20 players for you there that I sort of looked up to growing up.
First football in memory.
Let me think. I think it was probably, I don't remember anything pre the 1990 World Cup. So yeah, I would have to, certainly for TV. I'm trying to get my dates worked out, whether it was the 1990 World Cup or the first game that I went to, which was Clydebank against Dundee. And I don't know what year it was. I was staying over with a friend, and his dad took us to the game on the Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. I remember it finished something like 3-2 to Dundee, and it was just my first involvement of being in amongst a football crowd and all the shouts and the smells and all the atmosphere that goes on. It was Kilbowie Park, which doesn't exist anymore as a football stadium. Well, Clydebank don't even exist as a team in the professional ranks anymore. So that's a long time ago. And yeah, for major tournaments, 1990s, the first one that I can really remember. I don't really remember getting overly excited or down about Scotland going out. 92 was probably the first time, because by then I was probably playing a little bit of football and really understanding it. So 92 is probably the first one where I got really into it. And obviously Scotland being there, it helped out. We got a win as well against the CAS. But that probably covers that.
What were you like as a kid?
Always playing some form of sport. I think growing up, and maybe once you get into sort of more senior school, I had something on every day of the week. I had rugby training twice a week, football at least once a week, and then games for both of them at the weekend. And add to that, as I said, I did cricket on a Friday night, lots of athletics, cross-country running. I mean, there was something every single night of the week. So I think my sisters were always quite annoyed because they always had to wait for me to finish school 2 hours later than them before they got to go home. But no, I think that was, I would definitely say sporty. I was relatively well behaved as well at school. I didn't get myself into too much trouble. And I had opportunities to do something more with my football career, but I know that my parents felt, and now looking back on it, they're completely right. They felt it was much better to concentrate academically, because I had chances to go for trials at clubs, but I was never, looking back, I wasn't good enough to make it to that top grade. So I was right to stick with my head in the books at times as well, but I was never a big studier. I was a last minute cram what you didn't know into your mind. But because I ended up being school captain at Lomond School in Helensburgh as well, where I was for my whole schooling life. So yeah, I was a happy kid, wanted to be outside running about. If I didn't have an organised game or training, then I was out in the garden playing football, either with friends or by myself, and probably commentating and not even realising it.
Most famous player you've met?
There's quite a few. I mean, because recently I've been doing games with some bigger names like Steve McManaman, Martin Keogh, and obviously work with Chris Sutton a lot. I don't know if there's a big blockbuster name that I can mention. I mean, Henrik Larsson. You probably need to, by judging how famous they are, do you need to look at how many Instagram followers they've got? I don't know. Because Ali McAllister has got loads, so he's pretty famous. Yeah, I think because so much of my work is sheltered to Scotland, and you don't get quite as many world famous faces up here. And I mean, I meet a lot of famous rugby players, but that doesn't always resonate quite so much with the football community.
Best game you've called?
Best game that I did was at the end of, I think it was my first season with BT Sport, and it was Hibs against Rangers at Easter Road, 5-5. I don't know if you remember that one. It was an absolute cracker. Hibs went 3-0 up.
Yeah,
early on.
I believe won 6-0, we would have went second.
Yeah, exactly. So there was something to, I mean, nobody had even considered that beforehand. I mean, it had been mentioned, but nobody thought it was a realistic possibility. And they went 3-0 up. And you're like, this could actually happen. And then Rangers came back, scored 5 unanswered goals, went 5-3 up. And then Hibs, was it McLaren got the late equaliser? He scored a hat-trick, didn't he? And then Neil Lennon was doing the aeroplane. I think he thought that they'd finished second, and they hadn't. I don't know, but that was just a bonkers game. That you're looking at you're doing your summary. They're like, all right, 30 seconds to sum up at the end, and you're thinking, I don't have a clue. Who scored the first goal? I think that seems like last month. I can't remember anything that's gone on. And it's one of those funny things as a commentator. A lot of the time, I'll get to the end of a game and somebody will say, they'd have won it if that one hadn't come off the post. And I go, I don't remember anyone hitting the post. Sometimes once that moment is gone, you've got so much else going on in your head that moment's finished.
Because for that game, it was like the keeper just didn't really want to save.
Yeah, you didn't really need goalies in that
game. Best goal you've seen?
I think I don't know about, not necessarily in terms of the quality of it, but just the moment that it provided was Olivier Ncham's winning goal in Rome against Lazio, which just as a moment was phenomenal. It comes with the last kick of the ball, so the game is done at that stage. You don't need to worry about, sometimes as a commentator, you think, if it's 0-0 and somebody scores in the 85th minute, that they've won it. Well, they haven't, because there's 5 minutes left to play, so you can't overcommit. With that one, I think like 90, 93, 94 minutes on the clock, the game's over. So you can fully just go for it. And that was a phenomenal moment. There was a vast Celtic support in the Olympico that night as well. The noise that they made, trying to hold Chris Sutton down from running onto the pitch himself, things like that. That was, I think that's probably one of my standout memories of commentating is just getting something like that was pretty cool. I don't know, in terms of a real sort of stunning strike, I'm not too sure. There's nothing that's sticking out in my head at the moment. But that as a moment in Cham over in Rome was pretty cool.
Worst tackle you've seen?
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, given that I'm also a rugby commentator, I see some pretty hefty tackles in that, and those boys just get up. they don't roll about. They're straight up and ready for the next hit. I don't know. I don't think I've even commentated on too many red cards. Not real full blown red cards that you have to say, he's away, and you can almost call it before the referee even brings out the cards. Worst tackle. Do you know what? The tackle that winds me up more than anything else, I wasn't commentating, but I go to all the Scotland games as a fan, and in 2007 when we played Italy in the group stages, when we beaten France home and away, and we had the big game against Italy at the end of the group, and it was Alan Hughton and Chiellini. I'm sure it was Chiellini down in the corner, and Alan Hughton gets absolutely smashed by him. Like it's the biggest Scotland free kick that you've ever seen in your life, and the ref gives the free kick somehow to Italy. I still to this day no idea. You should look it up on YouTube if you've not seen it. And then they swing in the free kick. This is injury time, and it's 1-1. And they swing in the free kick into the box, and Christian Panucci heads it in, and Italy win 2-1, and we're out. We can't qualify after that. It's the most absurd tackle that I can remember, and particularly given that the ref gave it the other way.
Was he wearing specs?
Specs covered with tinfoil, I think.
What challenges have you overcame?
That's one that I don't get asked really. I mean, I think the main challenge with getting to the level of being a commentator that I'm at is probably just really that there aren't many opportunities. You're one of a very select brand to be able to get the chance. But I mean, I was quite fortunate growing up that I didn't really have any big difficulties. I was quite confident I would throw myself into everything and sort of trust my own ability. Maybe I don't know, I was probably quite shy, but nothing that really would impair what I wanted to do. Yeah, which is probably not a very good answer, but I've never really felt all that held back by anything. Yeah.
Best joke you've heard?
Growing up with my dad. You get full of dad jokes. Best joke. I'm also terrible at remembering jokes. As people think that as a commentator you have to remember everything. I write everything down. I've got scores and scores of notes. I don't know, and because you see, the best jokes aren't clean as well, so I can't tell any of those ones. I don't know. 100 cows in a field. How do you know which one's on holiday?
Don't know.
The one with a wee calf. There you go. There's a dad joke for you.
Best football anthem you've heard?
Ooh. You know, it pains me to say it. No, I can't even say it. I was gonna say It's Coming Home. The England one. I can't say that.
I mean, the England team did come home with nothing.
Yeah, and keep on doing that. Best football anthem.
I mean, it can be a club anthem as well.
Yeah. But I think mainly songs always stick in your head for major tournaments, and sadly Scotland haven't been at any. In '98, what they had, "Don't Come Home Too Soon," which that's just like I always thought that was the wrong message to send.
Bit ironic.
Yeah. But there was a few good songs. '98, I remember. Carnaval de Paris was one of the sort of really standout songs for that World Cup, and that worked quite well for it. I'd go with that. Although that was also at the time when you saw there was like the first really good football adverts as well, and Nike did all their. I don't know if you've seen it. Do you remember the Nike one in the airport? And they're all running about, and you've got Ronaldo and Denilson and Bebeto, like just all these amazing players running about the airport, and that had it was like a Brazilian samba song on it, which also became one of the kind of football anthems of that summer. That was pretty cool.
What was your ambition in life?
I mean, I think like most people that end up working in football, they all wanted to be footballers. That's what my industry is full of, failed footballers, really. But I guess in a way that if your attributes weren't, I mean, there's a lot of good players, just not good enough to make it in professional football. But your attributes are in other areas that I can talk about it, or I can describe it. So I think that's your way, is that you find your way in life, that what your strengths are, and you utilize them to get as close to what you love as you possibly can. And football and live sport was always my main love, and when it dawns on you that you're not going to be good enough to be part of it on the pitch, then I guess that's when I started migrating into the business, which started out with the easiest way in for me was through production, and then you suddenly work out. I mean, some people go on to be producers, directors, cameramen, reporters, presenters, and for me it was commentary. So I would say, and I always look back and you sort of wonder what you'd have been like if you had been a professional player and things, and if you'd done the daft things that end up in the papers, and that could have been you. So I think that probably was, certainly as a kid, that was my ambition, was to be a professional sportsman. But I should have known at that stage that I wasn't good enough to make that elite level.
What is it like working alongside the likes of Alan McAllister and Stephen Craigham?
Brilliant. Really, they're what you see on screen. They're engaging, they're friendly, they're funny. Just really, really good guys that I'm lucky enough that I can call them friends now. I remember that it was one of the early games I did with Ali, and I remember they were going around the TV compound afterwards, and Ali didn't have a lift home, and I could see it sort of getting closer and closer to me, and I was thinking, I've got a spare spot in my car. I can take Ali McCoy. And then I was thinking, it was up in Pittodrie, and I was like, I've got 3 hours in the car with Ali McCoy. How am I going to, keep him entertained for 3 hours? And honestly, he talked the whole way. It was great fun. You're getting stories and jokes. He is exactly what you see on screen. He's absolutely magic. And Stephen Craigham, he's a good mate of mine. We meet up every week and do a bit of filming for BT still. And we're doing a lot of work with Ross County as well this season, and BT and Premier. And the same goes with Michael Stewart and Chris Sutton as well. They're guys that they're just easy to get on with, and they're helpful. It's one of those strange ones. Recently, I've been doing more games down south, and you get used to working with a co-commentator that you work with all the time. And I found with these games, it's almost, particularly with COVID as well, you can't meet up. There's lots of restrictions beforehand, so you're just sort of placed in your position, and then your co-commentator arrives, and you're like, you have to form a relationship with this person for 90 minutes, and that's almost one of the most important parts of the job. You've got to get the names right of the players that you're commentating on, but you've also got to get a rapport with this person next to you, so you can't be overawed by the fact that Steve McManaman or Martin Keown or Leon Osman or Lucy Ward are standing next to you. You've got to quickly sort of assess their characteristics and see how you can get on with them on screen, which is, I guess that's part of some of the skill of being a commentator.
Yeah. What is it like listening back to yourself?
I don't do it because I don't like it. And obviously you'll be highly critical of anything that you're saying. I'll sometimes, if one of the TV stations puts out a tweet of the goals in your game, I'll have a listen to them and just make sure that I'm happy with how I called that moment. But other than that, I don't record my games and watch them. I remember one of the first times that you get used to hearing your voice on things, so that sort of strangeness goes away. But I remember one time being at Murrayfield and going to a Six Nations game, and I can't remember, it was maybe Scotland Wales or something like that, and on the big screens they were playing some action from some of the games, and I was commentating on it, and that was weird because we'd been out for lunch and had a few pints, and I'm sitting there with my mates, and then suddenly your voice is booming around Murrayfield and 68,000 people, are listening, and you're like, that's me. I now feel really self-conscious about it. But it's something you get a bit more used to. I probably should analyze things more, but it's more that you want little specific bits. You might think, oh, I want to be better at doing my intros or my team graphic. The rest of it, it's so instinctive. You just have to, you say what you say, and you can't change it. So yeah, I've been, one of the things that I've been trying to make sure, I think particularly since lockdown, because it's very different, I think you need to give a little bit more enthusiasm. And I did notice that from, if you listen back to some of the goals that I've commentated on, and there was a stage where I went, I don't think I'm giving that enough, because you don't have this roar of a crowd. And I sometimes quite like to give a pause in there. As long as you say the goal scorer, you say the score, whatever line that you want. Sometimes I like a pause in there so that the viewer can just hear that emotion that is in the crowd. You can't do that now, because there is no atmosphere in the ground. So you need to provide that yourself. So I probably go up a level, maybe exaggerate how important a goal is. I don't know, but I try and give it a little bit more at the moment, because it's just not the same without crowds. Sooner we get them back, the better.
Because you commented on the Hibs St Johnstone semi-final.
Yeah. I love those two Betfred Cup semi-finals. I was looking forward to them probably more than any other semi-final, because they were the number of times that you turn up to Hampden for a semi-final, and particularly in the last 3-4 years, where Celtic have been so dominant, and all you're thinking is, as a broadcaster, you want excitement, you want stories to be able to tell, and when the best team is the best team by a country mile, and they're blowing everyone away, you're very rarely getting competitive games. So it's great for Celtic fans who are watching and winning all the time, but you want a bit of variety, and you want surprises. Surprises bring excitement in football. So with those two semi-finals, they're so unpredictable. Nobody could call them beforehand. It was really, really difficult to pick winners in both games. So you're just thinking, this is going to be exciting because of what it's going to mean to whichever teams win and essentially lose it, because the two, St Mirren and Hibs, will be looking back at that and kicking themselves, thinking we might not get another chance like that to get to a final or get to lift a trophy for a long time. You've got the big two Glasgow teams out. You've got Aberdeen out. The St Mirren took care of Rangers and Aberdeen, so they've done the hard bit, and then they fall at the hurdle of Livingston and the incredible job that David Martindale's done there. And the Hibs game, I don't know if that was like a mental block. They had the chances early on, and it's such a different game. If I think Murphy had the really good one, didn't he? Or maybe two. And if those go in, then it's a totally different game. I don't know if it's a mental block that they obviously had the bad experience against Hearts in the Scottish Cup semi-final, which was more of a 50-50 game, I think. But Hearts get a penalty, score it. Hibs get a penalty and miss it. I don't know if that maybe played its part, because it was mentioned beforehand, and certainly Jack Ross said, this is our chance to avenge that defeat. So it is in the players' minds and the manager's mind, and maybe that played a role. But I'm looking forward to the final. It'll be really good. St Johnstone, Livingston, you would have never ever thought that, and from the neutral's point of view, I think it's great, but people wouldn't have picked that out as their favourite final. But it's teams that don't get the opportunities to lift silverware, and so it's great to put a different name on a trophy.
It is, because obviously I was speaking to Liam Craig a few weeks ago, or a few days, and he said that it might be his last time to win a trophy, because he was saying that he left St Johnstone to come to Hibs. St Johnstone won the Scottish Cup. And then he left Hibs to go to St Johnstone. Hibs won the Scottish Cup.
I think I mentioned that in commentary, actually. You know, they were probably the two worst transfers he could have made. Otherwise, he's got a medal for each. But that's the way of it. So yeah, for him it would be fantastic to at last get that medal.
What's the funniest thing that's happened before recording?
Oh, sorry, that's the dog. Funniest thing before recording. It usually centres around Ali McAllister and his timekeeping, because he doesn't really generally turn up on time. So I remember getting ready for a game, and Ali was supposed to do it. It was at Motherwell, and Gary McAllister was in the studio, but Ali was supposed to be on co-commentary. So as we got closer to kickoff, they're obviously doing their bit in the studio with Darren, and I'm up on the gantry just preparing my sort of final notes and all that sort of thing, and you're just expecting what's the lineup that it should be. I think it was supposed to be Stephen Craigan, because he would always do a Motherwell game, and Ali McAllister were going to come and join me on commentary, and Ali was late, so they made him go into the studio, and so Gary McAllister came up and joined me. And as I mentioned, he was one of the guys that I really idolised growing up, in that Leeds team, and then latterly Liverpool. So that was almost a little bit of being starstruck when Gary turned up on the gantry. That was the first time I'd met him, but he's a lovely guy. Really, really nice. We had a moment. It wasn't pre-recording, but it was post-recording. We had a nightmare journey in Germany after the Leipzig Celtic game, and we had to get we got a lift back to Berlin because we all had early morning flights the next day, and I had to. We had a producer with us, but I was the only one who had any German at all. But I'm talking like school German, right. And that was and so Amy, the producer, had the number of this taxi driver that was coming to get us to take us from Leipzig all the way to the airport in Berlin. And there was they couldn't communicate. He had not a word of English. She had not a word of German. So I came in trying to remember my high school German. It took like an hour and a half just to get him to pick us up. That was how bad that was. But then after it, he couldn't find anything. Like I'm not putting any of this down to my lack of German. I'm putting it down to this driver. Like he couldn't drive. He was taking us all over the place. And when it got we were already even on the motorway, the Autobahn in Germany, we were like, does this guy know what he's doing? Does he get a driving license? Do we need to actually stop this from happening? Because it was just so dodgy. And eventually he was dropping us off, or he had to drop Chris off at his hotel, because we were at two different hotels. And he went into a car park at the airport that let you in but wouldn't let you out. So, because it's after hours. So he was trying to lift up the barrier himself. Eventually somebody came over, helped him out. And it was a car park that he wasn't supposed to be in, basically. did loop around, got out. And then when he came out of there, rather than joining the road, he just drove down the cycle path, like at the side of the road, trying to find this hotel. And we were just like, what is going on here? So eventually he stopped. I mean, the hotel is there, but there's a wall and, you know, everything that surrounds a hotel. And we're on this cycle path. He gets out to try and find his way into the hotel to ask how he can get in. And Chris just gives up. Chris jumps out, gets his bag, and hops over the wall and goes to the hotel himself. So this guy's then confused when he comes back and Chris isn't there. And I'm trying to explain in my school German that you don't need to drop Chris off anymore. Take us to the other hotel. But Chris, at that time, as we actually got to our hotel, realized that Chris had also tried to be helpful and take the cameraman's bag, but actually took my bag as well. So then had to explain to this same taxi driver that couldn't understand anything that no, we had to go back to Chris's hotel to pick up my bag and then take me back to where we currently are. I mean, it was just, I was using every single bit of German that I had, and even then it was a nightmare. I think we ended up getting to bed about 1 a.m.
Best person you've worked with?
I think I've got to say Chris Sutton. You know, he's a massive personality, and another one that, you know, maybe initially you might be a little bit nervous of meeting, but he was great with me. He's you know, you have to build relationships with these people, and I learned pretty quickly. It was actually a really good introduction that I got from Chris, because my first game for BT was Ayr United against Kilmarnock in the Betfred Cup, and I went in, met everyone. You know, you're naturally going to be a little bit nervous, but, you know, trying to be as relaxed as you can. And Chris was really good. He'd phoned me before, we'd had a chat, but he was asking me questions about Ayr United, you know, a team who neither of us would have seen, because it was first game of the season. They're not a team that are going to get as much publicity or newspaper coverage. And he was asking me questions, and I soon realized that he wasn't asking for his own benefit. He was checking to make sure that I knew. And it was really important. I knew after that, you know, the level of professionalism of the guys that you're working with, you need to be at the top of your game, because they know it. So you need to make sure they know that you know it as well, because otherwise you get caught out. They'll always assume that you know what they know. So you never want to get asked a question that you can't provide the answer for. So I think after that, you know, Chris was quite happy. He was like, right, he knows what he's doing. But he would still, for the next 3 seasons, try and ask me questions to catch me out. Every game he'd try and get me on something. But yeah, so I think yeah, I'll pick Chris amongst the many good, really good guys that I work with.
Best ground you've called the game at?
I really enjoyed my first away European game with BT was in St. Petersburg when Celtic lost to Zenit. That at the time was the most expensive football stadium in the world. They just spent $1 billion building it for the World Cup. So that was just the whole experience of going to a place like St. Petersburg. I'd never been to Russia before. I love traveling. But going to Russia was really cool. And it was really cold as well. It must have been, I think it was about -25, and Kieran Tierney and Scott Brown are still wandering about in shorts and t-shirt, as they do. But yeah, so that was pretty special. But at the same time, I like the old grounds. because I think a lot of the time, a lot of modern stadiums don't have a lot of character. And I mentioned Ayr United there. Somerset Park's one of the grounds I really enjoy going to. I love seeing terracing. It's just a bit of a throwback to a bygone era. Tynecastle, I think, always gets a great atmosphere. That's really well documented. Celtic Park and Ibrox on European nights are something else. They're phenomenal. Hampden Park, when it's bouncing, is unique. You don't always get it, but Hampden can be really, really special. The best ground that I've been to or an atmosphere, my favourite atmosphere that I've ever experienced was actually a rugby game. And last year, 2019, we went over to Japan for the World Cup and went to Japan, Scotland, and Yokohama. And it's the only time that I can honestly say that I was happy for the opposition to win, because the Japanese fans were amazing, and you could just see what it meant to them to win that game against Scotland. We were obviously there supporting Scotland and in our kilts and Scotland tops and having a great time, but the Japanese people were amazing. And I've been to a lot of pretty cool grounds traveling with the Scotland football team. I should probably pick out some of them as well. There was at the Parc des Princes for when Scotland won, James McFadden scored. That will always stand out as a ground that I enjoyed going to. And also when we won in Zagreb as well, that was pretty special, because nobody expected us to win that night either. Snodgrass bundled one in, I think. So yeah, they're probably two of the best that I've been to with Scotland.
What is it like calling a game without the fans? Yeah,
and I mentioned it before, but it's very strange, because you're trying to build up how big a game is and what it means to both sides, and football without the fans in there, it shows how much they mean to the game. Without it, the games they're not as exciting. I'm more than happy to admit that. I don't find it nearly as exciting. I quite like to sit back and take moments in the game to not say anything and allow the crowd to bring through their passion and voices into people's living rooms, because I think that's really important. That's what when I come away from a game that I've been to as a fan, there's another. Do you know what? A ground that I really loved going to and I've been to twice. So I'll just go back to your last question. Was Dortmund, the Westfalenstadion, Dortmund's ground, where I've seen Scotland play and score. And I also saw Brazil-Japan there in the World Cup. So that's a stadium that I absolutely loved. And taking the noise that take Dortmund there, and you've got the yellow wall at the Westfalenstadion, you take that out, and it's just a big empty row of seats. And it's the novelty of hearing the players shouting and the managers shouting has worn off. You just want to hear that roar of a crowd again, which there's something really magical about it. When I come back from games that I've been to as a fan, and even as a commentator, I take my headphones off every now and again, just so you're not getting, it's not manufactured noise, but I can turn the crowd up and down. So if I think it's too loud, then I can turn it down. I generally have it up max because I want to hear everything that's going on. And the other thing that you've got with it is that everyone can hear you commentating, which is that is a new thing to me. And I noticed it after the St Mirren Rangers game in the Betfred Cup quarterfinal. And I went over to do the post-match interviews, and one of my friends was there working for Sky, and she said, that was really good. We got 90 minutes of your commentary over here. And I thought, that's weird. I wouldn't have thought they'd have a feed of the game and they'd be watching it on TVs. And she said, no. we could hear every word you were saying. So if she can hear it, then the players can hear it, the managers can hear it, the directors can hear it. So you're really being listened to at that stage, which is something that usually the players wouldn't be able to hear you.
I mean, it must have been strange when you done the Edinburgh Derby one.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been strange, because in normal circumstances, Hampden would have been packed.
Yeah, and the Edinburgh Derby, the derbies in Scotland, the big ones, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Dundee, they're such magnificent fixtures in football, not just in Scottish football. They stand out for me. In British football, European football, they're awesome occasions. And I've done loads of Edinburgh derbies. At BT, we were kind of lucky enough to get quite a lot of them as our picks. I love them, absolutely love them. And you every time you do it, you're trying to convey what it means to the supporters from Edinburgh. And I'm like, well, I'm not from Edinburgh, so maybe it's unfair of me trying to do that. But I guess it's part of your job as a commentator to summarize the story of the game. Yeah, and so no fans in a Scottish Cup semi-final, Edinburgh Derby, and there's so much history going before it. Football, it's for the fans, and for them not to be there, it's just such a shame. And that was a brilliant game. It was such a good match, and that was the first thing that I said after it was, how good would that have been with the fans in there? Because that was a game, that was one of the first games within lockdown that I enjoyed, that I just thoroughly enjoyed the game of football, because so many of the other ones, you just miss the fans too much. That one would have been one of the all-time greats with fans. Without them, it was still a really good game.
It was sort of just Nisbet. I think what Nisbet's tried is he's tried to obviously go high, and it's just at the bar.
Yeah.
Then Hearts will go up the park, get a penalty, and they score it.
It's really unlucky, because when you go for those areas on a penalty, those high areas, goalies don't dive up there.
No.
So if you can get it under the bar, you're going to score. But obviously there's that adrenaline, there's pressure. And I know that Kevin had a really tough week as well up to that, and he'd lost his father, and that will have been in his mind all week, and probably in the moments before striking the penalty. So and we knew that. I had heard from a friend that had happened, but I didn't want to mention it. I didn't think it was our place to bring that up during the game.
But it just showed like his capability. Obviously, when he lost his dad, but he still stepped up.
Yeah, to be willing to take on that responsibility, and to have confidence in his ability, and you're fractions away from nailing it. Mm-hmm. And in those circumstances, probably putting Hibs in the final. So yeah, I feel for any player that misses a penalty. It's a horrible thing. But somebody's got to be the sort of hero and the villain and those things. And Kevin was never the villain, but you definitely felt for him after that game.
But the cup final, that was a cracker.
Yeah, it was. Again, I mean, Hearts, another game that I actually enjoyed, that thoroughly just loved the game. I can't believe how much Hearts put into that, and how much they deserved to. I think they deserved to win that final, if I'm honest. It was really tough on them not to win it, but it was an incredible day. I think for the players to put on a game like that without fans is real testament to them, because to not have the fans urging you on, I think it's a lot harder for the players to go and really put that emotion into a game, and to remember how much it means. And they did that day. Both sets of players, because it takes two to make a great final like that. And it was really harsh on Hearts. And you had Conor Hazard as the random hero. Nobody would have picked that out a week before that game. There would have been Celtic fans going, what's that guy? Not knowing who the guy was that was going to be the hero in the cup final was.
Because obviously, leading up to the 2 penalties that he saved, he hadn't got nowhere near to them, the other ones.
And the thing is, because in the other goal, you've got Craig Gordon, and you're thinking, this is the script. We'd all spoken about it before the game. The script is Craig Gordon's going to be the hero and win the cup for Hearts. And he almost had. And Conor will have known, because he'll have trained with Craig for years, and he'll have looked up to him, and he'll have learned from him, and Craig will have given him tips. And you're thinking, I think so much on the penalties, although the goalies are never going to be criticised if their team loses, I generally think the team that wins is going to be the one that's got the better, more experienced goalie. So I think almost at that stage, you're probably fancying Hearts in the final, just because Craig Gordon's been there, done it all. He had the extra motivation of leaving Celtic in the summer, going back to his boyhood club. And that would have probably been the more romantic tale, would have been for it to be Craig Gordon's final. He had his moments in the game, that's for sure. But that was a great game. Penalties it's an exciting way to end it, but it's a shame that one has to lose in the sort of scenario like that. But we're well used to that by now.
Exactly, and I just hope fans can get back soon rather than later.
Yeah, I know. And we've got a major tournament coming up in the summer that who knows what it's going to be, but a major tournament without fans would be very strange.
But no, it's been a pleasure to have you on my channel.
Likewise, thank you very much. I'm glad we got it sorted and got on. I've really enjoyed chatting to you.
But so thank you ever so much, Rory, for coming on my channel, chatting. Been an absolute pleasure. But what I'll do is I'll end it here, but carry on chatting to you if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I've got a couple of things I need to do, but yeah, no problem.